Joining me right now is Nasser Abdul Aziz Al Nasser, UN High Representative for the Alliance of Civilization. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
A pleasure. When we talk about United Nations, people are always intrigued about UN. You know, it's a global organization, takes care of so many matters of the world. But what I wanted to ask you, how did it feel to be at the helm of that organization? Because you were the president of the 66th General Assembly session at the UN. How did it feel?
Well, for me to reach to that level, to be the president of the General Assembly, of course, that was very exciting, but with big responsibilities and with many challenges that I was going to face, especially that time between 2011 and 2012. If we look at what was happening in the Middle East, what's so-called the Arab Spring or Arab Awakening, to the Sustainable Development Summit, which called Rio Plus 20, to natural disasters and climate change, and to the United Nations Security Council reform and General Assembly revitalization. So many good, important issues it was on the agenda of 66 session.
What happens when you have a problem with a country and the GA sits down and says, okay, we want to address this, like specifically with Libya? When you were the president, there was also an issue with Somalia, but I wanted to get into Libya. How difficult was it to address the issue of Libya?
Yeah, when you see, usually with a situation like in Libya, the Security Council deal with that, but the General Assembly as the World Parliament, and I decided to engage the General Assembly in dealing with Libya situation. First of all, I was in support of the wave of democracy and freedom and looking for dignity and respect at that time. So what I did, I changed the Credential Committee, and then I asked them to come up with a draft resolution, and I asked the General Assembly to endorse it. That's where to recognize the opposition, which they were leading at that time, the revolution against the dictatorship. And for the first time, that General Assembly voted and allow the opposition to sit on the seats of Libya and raise the new flag. And never happened like that before. So, and that's where allow, stop the representative from the old regime to speak on behalf of Libya. So that was really one of the action that led to speed up the change in Libya and the new government, the new prime minister, a new parliament.
Being an insider at the United Nations also allowed you to have a critical look at the organization, UN itself. What do you think are the current challenges of the UN?
You see, let me first tell you that I hear in many places, many people always accuse United Nations. It's not very efficient. It's not a giant organization with a bureaucracy. And they don't know what is United Nations doing. United Nations, it's a member state driven. When there is consensus among member states, you will see the United Nations doing a great job. But when there is no agreement, how can an organization achieve or try to succeed. It's up to the member states how they want the UN to be. More effective, efficient, strong, then they have to work together and support this organization. And I think, especially today, the world more demand of the work of the United Nations. Today we see many challenges, political issues, conflicts around the world, diseases, climate change, poverty, and we are not far away from the Millennium Goals when the head of states met in year 2000 and agree on the Millennium Goals to achieve a sustainable development and try to reduce the poverty around the world to the minimum. Unfortunately, it's only the remaining, it's almost less than 1 year. And if you look around you in the world, we see more poverty, we see more problems, which that affect the development. And why it's happened? Because yes, there is a promise, there is agreement, but the commitment wasn't there. Only a little bit of that.
Commitment from the countries participating, or
Yeah.
from within the UN?
The member states
Member states.
who are driving the whole organizations.
All right, we'll get to that in a while, but in the meantime, I wanted to talk about your amazing book, A Year at the Helm of the United Nations General Assembly, A Vision for Our Century, Nasser Abdulaziz Al Nasser. When I was going through this book, pretty powerful book, congratulations on putting this together. When I was reading it, the first thing that struck me was that this book is dedicated to your son and to all the young people of the world. Tell us a little bit about the book. How did you think about writing it?
The 66th session was really, to me, was the most challenging session. The timing, the issues, and the efforts that put on making that session very successful. First of all, we dealt with political issues. That's why my main theme for the 66th session of the General Assembly was mediation, because on the UN Charter, General Assembly of the United Nations mandated to use Chapter 6, which is mediation, to try to solve all disputes peacefully. And I thought I will enhance that mandate and try to contribute to the stability of the world, because all of us, and at the end of the day, we want peace. How can we make peace? Yes, Security Council is mandated to deal with the crisis, using force, using Chapter 7, but the General Assembly, the Parliament of the world, mandated by Chapter 6 to use mediation to solve any dispute and diffuse tensions around the world as a soft power tool. And then climate change issue, it's really very serious. So that's why I said, well, then I will address 4 issues, like 4 pillars for my session. First, mediation. Second, natural disaster. Third, sustainable development, because of the World Earth Summit called Rio Plus 20 at that year, and Security Council reform and the General Assembly revitalization.
As far as support in natural disaster is concerned, UN has been playing a critical role in that. But do you think UN has been successful in terms of mediation?
Well, today we see, and even in the last few years, many conflicts around the world, in Africa and Asia, even Europe and Latin America, using soft power tool most of the time was successful. Also, don't forget, regional organizations, they support the UN mission on the mediation issue, like we see African Union today. There's many crises in Africa. They are UN supporting, United Nations supporting African Union in order to achieve peace, stability, by sending peacekeeping troops, by supporting them financially with the experts. And then we see in Europe, the EU, in the Arab world, the Arab League, in Latin America, in Asia. So there is a great demand, because using force is not always successful. Sometimes very sensitive, very complicated. You have to engage many, sometimes wise leaders who can really approach and go straight to the problem, to the root causes. And in this area, you need also not only governments, you need civil society. Sometimes if there is a religious conflict, you need religious leaders, you need business community. Sometimes they can play a really very effective role.
What was, in your eyes, what was the impact of the Arab Spring? You said that you were in support of it.
At that time, when this wave of young people were demanding their rights, respect, human rights, and started from Tunisia and then to Egypt and then to Libya, I thought this is a great moment for the Middle East. And because sometimes if you look at the development issue, Middle East is a rich region, not only with resources and money, with civilization, history, religions, everything. And why it's happening there? The poverty is, the rate of employment is increasing, and you know, Middle East, it's one of the area that 70% of the population are young, under 25 years. Can you imagine that? Some of the story was successful. We see Tunisia today are really growing. They just had the election, and now they're waiting for the result. So democracy it's moving forward, and that will be great. Egypt is moving forward, but I don't know what's happened that Arab Spring drift in one way or the others, because the people are not prepared, the role of civil society, because it's very important. But I think there is many stories around the world. When there is change, it takes time. You know, sometimes some people under a dictatorship, they need a rehabilitation, you know, after to exercise their rights and democracy. It's not just business as usual, you know. And I think they need the international, they need the regional support, the international community support, because if we see more troubles and conflicts in the Middle East, that will really exceed the border of that region and move to another area. So we need a collective efforts to address what's going on now.
Were you? What was your reaction when you heard about the result of the Hosni Mubarak trial?
Well, that's no one can. It's up to the Egyptian
Judicial system.
System, and even the president of Egypt, he said, "I respect that decision." Even United Nations issue a statement, the Secretary General, by that. But he also stressed that we should respect this and implement it. It's not just so. I hope what we see now. I hope to see Middle East is really coming back, and we want to see how the international community can help these countries during, support. It's not only, as I said, financially, but many UN organizations can really play a very effective role, and from the education, youth, that can. But the other problem, what we see today in Syria and Iraq, and many people ask how can we deal with this dangerous situation. I think again I will go back. This is today. It's not the Middle East problem anymore. It's the world problem. So we have to be really serious, ready to work together and to address this. Why we see young people? Many terrorist group, they hijack the mind of youth. This one. Second, we need a very effective role of religious leaders, moderate to address this issue and talk to these people. Scholars and academia, they can, civil society and business community, and we have to look at the root causes. Why we see people, are they because of they are being marginalized and they missed opportunities, lack of education, increase of poverty. Even the communities and parents, they have an obligation how to guide their children, and this is really, we have to stop and look at this, and because we see it's not only young people from the Middle East, but we see young people coming from Europe, from Australia, from United States, from other areas. It's a really very dangerous situation.
Before I get to the role of Alliance of Civilization, I just quickly wanted to turn to your book. In one of the opening parts, you mentioned that leaders of the world came together in San Francisco and signed the United Nations Charter in 1945. The United Nations is an organization that illustrates the yearning for peace is a universal search, and that universal peace requires universal solutions. Do you think United Nations has been successful in addressing the tensions between Palestine and Israel?
This is a very good question. As I said, United Nations is a member state driven. Security Council cannot when there is a veto, look what it's happened on the issue of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and the issue of Syria, no consensus, no agreement, division among the members of the Security Council, especially the P5. This can affect the work of the United Nations. So we have to look around and see if this will continue, and especially we live in a world today is shrinking, becoming a global village. The more we shrink, the more problem we are going to face. If we are not ready to deal with that, then we have to reform the UN. We have to reform the UN Charter. It's next year we will celebrate the 70th anniversary of United Nations with the same charter designed for a number of countries at that time, 50, 60 countries. Today we have 193. We have many emerging powers. We have more problems. We need to be ready to address that. So I think Security Council need to be reformed. The most important is the UN Charter. We have to make or to have a very effective Security Council to deal with these crises in a fair way. The conflict between the Palestinians and Israeli is also one of the reasons that we see today problems in the Middle East. Because, as I said, just go back to the root causes, and some of that will answer our question. Why? Why now? It's accumulation that led to all of these, but on the other hand, many extremist group who hijacked the religion to do something for their own sake. And I think we should learn from what's happening and what's going on today and dealing with the Israeli-Palestinian issue in a fair way, two states, respect, peace for all people of the two states, that will create, you will see less troubled world than Syria. Also, we cannot just ignore dangerous conflicts. More than 200,000 people died, and 10 million are living in a refugees camp, and the world just sitting and said, well, we see, of course, many initiatives, many ideas how we can end, but this need a very effective United Nations, very effective Security Council. So I think it's about time that we should reform the UN Charter.
How would you be able to achieve that reform?
That's we need, not me, the member states. Do they want?
The members are fighting each other.
Yeah, but you see, do we want? There is a reform. There is a reform exercise since 18 years called Security Council reform. There is different group in the UN. There's a P5, the 5 permanent. You have the G4, Brazil, India, Japan, and Germany, and you have the majority under United for consensus dealing with this. When I was a president, this issue was one of the main pillar, which I spend a lot of time and effort. I organized 8 intergovernmental meetings to push a little bit forward. I know it's a not easy issue, but we have to come up with, and then a retreat. Nobody did that, putting all my efforts and my relations with member states, but that's need. I think if we want this United Nations to be really more effective, more ready to deal with very sensitive and important issues, I think it's time that we have to be very serious about the reform.
And now you are the High Representative for the Alliance of Civilization. People have heard this name since its inception, when Kofi Annan established it. But if you could just tell us a little bit about what is Alliance of Civilization, what does it do?
Right. This initiative came by the Prime Minister of Spain after the September 11th. He came to the General Assembly and he said, well, what's happened here in New York, if we don't be ready to deal with something like this now, I think the clash of civilization is going to happen. So he said, I propose we have to initiate an organization under the name of Alliance of Civilization than Clash of Civilizations. And that UN accept, and they work hard with, at that time, the Secretary General Kofi Annan, and this organization start the mission 6-7 years ago as a soft power tool to prevent conflicts around the world and diffuse tensions. So, and then in order to achieve this mission, there is 4 areas or 4 pillars to focus. And that will lead to what we were talking about now, the crisis in the Middle East. And number 1 is education. Number 2, youth. Number 3, media. Number 4, migration. So 4 pillars. If you look around the world today, all the problems what we see related to the 4 pillars. So we have to work with governments, civil societies, academia, religious organization, and business community, how we can achieve peace through a long-term investment on youth with good education. Also, we want to see a responsible media. Social media today really fueling all of these issues and images, and that will lead to more problems.
Some of them could be false information as well.
Yeah. Today, young people, they have easy access. Even your son or my son or anybody's children, and you cannot control. It's very difficult. So we need a responsible. So we have to do something about by educating young journalists and how to deal with the sensitive issues that affect our life, affect our stability and peace. Migration, because of conflicts around the world, you see many thousand, 100,000 of people are leaving their countries because of conflicts, because of poverty, because of diseases. They move. And we see rejection in some ways, because migrants, when they come, and if they are well educated, if they are hardworking, they can get jobs. They will be a threat to the receiving countries' people, but they can, most of the time, they can play a very good role in supporting the country. You know, there is many countries, in a few years' time, their population will be reduced because of the aging factor. So can you imagine some countries from 70-75% they're old people, and the rest are young. They cannot support the economy, they cannot support. So all these big industrial countries, if they don't do something about it, by receiving migrants, by educating them, integrating them, they're going to face a problem. So this is where we are working in different regions, and how to not to look at this as a threat, looks as a positive contribution, and by helping them, integrating them, educating them. And there are young people also, they can really help the society, help the future of the countries. And some migrants, which they also play good role for their own country by working and sending money back, which help the society, help the community, and helping this country which they receive them to develop their economy.
Right. You mentioned youth, and you also dedicated your book to the youth of the world. How difficult do you think it is to engage with them? Because when you look at, for example, Pakistan, you have 65% population is from 18 to 25. Youth are being radicalized on an alarming pace. When you look at what's going on in the United Kingdom, what is your biggest challenge in terms of engaging the youth or building an alliance of the youth of the world from different parts of the world, different countries, especially those countries that don't like each other?
Yeah. Well, we have programs. We have youth summer camp. They come from an area where there is conflicts, Middle East, Europe, Africa, with programs, how they can work together, how can they respect each other, how they can understand each other. And with that, we are now, we have many countries approach us to host summer camp, autumn camp, winter camp for youth. With Malaysia, Azerbaijan, Qatar want to do like that. So this issue is, but even the United Nations, because of what you are talking about, there is a demand today how we can deal with, because they are the future leaders. We have to prepare them than being a negative citizen. United Nations also, the Secretary General appointed special envoy for youth, and to see how we, United Nations, focus in dealing with all youth around the world, with programs, with ideas, with engaging governments, foundation, universities. I'm sure UNESCO is doing a great job as well, but this needs a collective effort. You know, even in Pakistan also, Pakistan need United Nations. There's a programs, there is something, how we can address this issue and try to avoid. Also, we have private sector with us. We have BMW, which they're engaging on programs, how to reward young people with some good ideas, some good thoughts. So we are moving forward. We try to enlarge this approach by engaging governments, non-governments, foundations, and private sector.
Two quick questions. You also mentioned in your book, and I would like to quote you over here, this is a very important point that you mentioned. You warned that the failure of the Security Council to respond to specific challenges could erode the credibility of the United Nations. This is a serious issue here. Do you think the UN is aware of this? And if they are, then what are the steps they're taking?
That's why we go back to the reform. We go back to the reform. United Nations, it's an organization led and driven by member states. So we have to focus more and more on the reform. Look what's happened in the area, on the issue of Syria. As you said, the Israelis-Palestinian conflict, and somewhere else. And we don't need, you know, we are dealing with so many fires around the world. If we don't have a plan and we don't have a very effective organization to deal with all crises and all trouble and be ready for the future as well, then we're going to face really a difficult future.
All right. And in closing, especially with regards to your book and with regards to your time at the UN, at the GA, what would be your message to the youth of the world?
The message, they have very important role to play in supporting their society, supporting their countries, supporting the international community by playing a very positive role. And also they deserve that we should recognize them as a very effective groups, that they are going to be the future leaders. But we have to listen to their voice. We have to support them. We have to take care of them. And we need a collective effort by governments, non-governments, parents, and societies and communities can play. What you see today, many young people, some terrorist group hijack their mind. For what? So I will work hard to bring awareness, to support youth people, and we want to see a better world with their contribution.
Well, we wish you all the best, and we wish you good luck on your new book also, A Year at the Helm of the United Nations General Assembly, A Vision for Our Century. Nasser Abdul Aziz Al Nasser, UN High Representative for the Alliance of Civilization. Thank you so much for taking the time out, and we wish you good luck.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you.